Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 29. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatva mam shantim richati. Bhoktaram, the beneficiary, yajna, of sacrifices, tapasam, and penances and austerities, sarvaloka, of all planets and the demigods thereof, Maha-Ishwaram, the Supreme Lord, Suhridam, the benefactor, Sarva, of all, Bhutanam, the living entities, Jnatva, thus knowing, Mam, me, Lord Krishna, Shantim, relief from material pangs, Richhati, one achieves. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: a person in full full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Please repeat: a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Purport: the conditioned souls within the clutches of the illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world, but they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord because He is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than He. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tamishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are His subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute, and the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya, and that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter, for it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which in every respect helps one control the senses and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Karma Yoga or action in Krishna consciousness. Next chapter is Dhyana Yoga. So this is actually the final chapter, final verse of the 5th chapter. So here, this chapter is titled Karma Yoga, and Srila Prabhupada has given the highest definition of Karma Yoga. In fact, if you have attended yesterday's Srimad Bhagavatam class, His Grace Nandagopal Prabhu was explaining about Karma Yoga as elevation to heavenly planets, doing all the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies in order to elevate oneself to the heavenly planets. Now that is one aspect. Karma Yoga can be, according to the advancement of the person, Karma Yoga can be defined. So here Srila Prabhupada is giving the highest definition of Karma Yoga, which is action in full Krishna consciousness. So in the beginning there is mixture. So there is karma, jnana, yoga and finally bhakti. Actually bhakti is real yoga, but prefacing this perfection of yoga, which is bhakti yoga, in fact there is a small book that Srila Prabhupada has written, Krishna Consciousness, the topmost yoga system. Topmost yoga, and that is exactly what is said in the 6th chapter, the end of 6th chapter. This is the end of 5th chapter. In the 6th chapter, Krishna says that the highest yogi is bhakti yoga. Now, when one is doing some Vedic rituals, at least he is following something, although he is not completely Krishna conscious yet. Like many people, they worship devatas, for example. Some worship Ganesh, and different occasions they worship different devatas. That is not perfect. In fact, Krishna actually condemns in the Bhagavad Gita. But still, he is the one who put that system. Why? Because not everybody can readily submit to Krishna. Although everybody is actually an eternal servant of Krishna, people, we are all in this material world reluctant to serve or surrender to Krishna. So, Krishna is kind. So, his idea is that, alright, you don't want to surrender to me, alright, you surrender to, you want your material desires fulfilled, alright, for this particular benefit, material benefit, you worship this devata, that devata. I will show you. There are you see this. Sanskrit is a little bit long. I will read the English because I think 6 verses are together in this. 2nd canto, 3rd chapter, verses 2 all the way through 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see, One who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma or Brihaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king Indra, and one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishwadeva. And one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Ashwini Kumaras. And a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. Now, actually, those who do this bodybuilding, there is another way making use of the earth only, right? Because of the gravity, the weight is there and they are pulling, they are getting some muscle. So, that is a very gross way of worshipping the earth. But a more subtle way is there. The Vedic way is always subtler than the one that is more usually done in Western world. Like even, for example, nuclear weapons. They have these huge nuclear bombs and the uranium and everything. But in Vedas, in the Vedic times, even up till 5,000 years ago, Arjuna, even Ashwathama, they released Brahmastra. Brahmastra is nothing but a nuclear weapon. But just by mantra, they can make an ordinary arrow into a nuclear weapon. So this is a subtle science. Like now we have this live streaming. Now live streaming is going on Facebook. And we have similarly broadcasting TV stations and all this. So in Mahabharata, when the Kurukshetra war was going on, Sanjay was relaying to Dhritarashtra by this kind of broadcasting method. But subtle, not with all these cameras and cables, nothing. Just it's a subtle way of doing it. Much more finer and doesn't depend. We have to now depend on all these things. If the power goes off for some reason, go on this broadcast. But at those times there was no power even. No electricity and all these things. Nothing. No broadcasting stations, no satellites, but they can do it. So it's a subtle way of doing things. So worshipping the earth is a way to become strong, and the Western way of, now the way that we know, all this gym and all this, that is making use of the earth only basically. Okay? So that's why these are not simply being said here. These are actually practical methods, but just that we do not know how it works. Okay? So one who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. And one who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvashi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead. And one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. Here it is never said whether you want good bank balance or whether you want wealth or opulence. Never said Lakshmi. Nowadays everybody is doing Ashtalakshmi Puja, there was one occasion, somebody called us for Lakshmi Kuvera Puja. They asked us, our temple committee, to participate in that also because some Murti was coming from India. So I wrote back, why are you doing Lakshmi Kuvera Puja? Why Lakshmi and Kuvera will come together? Lakshmi is Narayan's wife. Why she will come with Kuvera? What kind of puja you are doing? Then I quoted two verses. One spoken by Kuvera, one spoken by Lakshmi. From Bhagavatam, I sent them. The Kuvera says, I only will favor the devotee of Krishna. I don't favor anybody else. And then Lakshmi also says the same thing. I think I remember the Lakshmi verse number. You see, Lakshmi is saying this to Narayan. I think, this. Mat praptaye jesha surasuradayas tapyanta ugram tapa aindriye dhiyah ऋते भवत्पादपरायणान्नमां विन्दन्त्यहं त्वद्धृदयायतो This is Lakshmi speaking, O Supreme Unconquerable Lord, when they become absorbed in thoughts of material enjoyment, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, as well as the other demigods and demons, undergo severe penances and austerities to receive my benedictions. But I do not favor anyone, however great he may be, unless he is always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Lakshmi is saying to Narayan, unless he is always engaged in the service of your lotus feet, I do not favor anyone. Because I always keep you within my heart, I cannot favor anyone but a devotee. You see, when Sudama, Vipra, he went to meet Krishna. Krishna got down from his bed, he put Sudama on his bed. He placed him on his bed and washed his feet. And what was Rukmini doing? Rukmini is none other than Lakshmi. And she was fanning with chamra. Lakshmi is fanning him. Now we are doing Ashtalakshmi Puja and all this. Lakshmi is doing puja for Sudama. Like we do here chamra to Krishna. See how she serves the devotee. So Kuvera, I think I forgot the number of the fourth canto. It's in the fourth canto. He is speaking to Dhruva Maharaj. Kuvera. So I sent them that. These two verses. And I told them, we can't participate in this kind of things. This is not according to any Vedic rules. Simply for money, you put Kuvera and Lakshmi put together because they are dealing with money, so you just put them together. No, you give us some books, table space so that we can sell our books. Okay, they said okay. So we went there and sold our books. Whoever came there, we sold them Bhagavad Gita. So in this way there are, you see how many types of worships are there. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. So you see, next verse, one should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotee for spiritual advancement. For spiritual advancement, we should worship Vishnu or his devotee. And for protection of heredity and advancement of a dynasty, one should worship the various demigods. So spiritual advancement is actually what matters. If you are spiritually advanced, automatically your family heritage, everything will be protected. You don't have to separately endeavor for anything. One shot, everything is done. One should worship Vishnu or his devotee only. Now, among Hindus, they worship Hanuman. In fact, I remember Narendra Modi ji, Prime Minister of India, he also said, our Hinduism is very flexible. Anybody, if he is a feminist, he can worship Durga Devi. If he is a Pahalwan, his Bhagwan is Hanuman. In this way, he was saying, this is not the fact. It's not that anybody is God. Hanuman is not God. If you say to Hanuman that you are God, he will give you a tight slap and you will never wake up after that. Because he is chanting Ram's name. Why he will accept himself as God? He is saying, I am Ramdut Hanuman. In front of Ram, Ram is everything to him. And you tell Hanuman that you are God. Won't Hanuman get upset? That is insult to Ram. So, this is another nonsense. And they treat him like a demigod, Hindus. They worship Hanuman for protection. Bhoot pisach nikat nahi aave, Mahavir jab naam sunave. In the Hanuman Chalisa. To save themselves from Bhoot pisach, they will pray to Hanuman. No, that's not. Hanuman is first of all not even a Devata. He is higher than any Devata because he is a pure devotee. A pure devotee is always higher than all the Devatas because all the Devatas are also contaminated with desire to enjoy this material world. That's why they were given different positions. Now Hanuman has not taken any other position. He is a pure devotee and nothing else. So he will not be even bothered if we pray to him just for some getting rid of some bhoot pisach and all these things. That's not his business. He will not do that. Because he is a devotee of Lord Ram, whoever is a devotee of Lord Ram, that person is very dear to Hanuman. Any devotee, like now you are all devotees. If another person is a devotee, becoming a devotee of Krishna, you will become happy. So similarly, Hanuman is a very great devotee, pure devotee. So he will become happy only if another person becomes devotee of Krishna or Ram. So it's all, nowadays Hindus, they do anything. No understanding of any. You see, now next. One who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manus. One who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons. And one who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you want nothing of material advancement, then Krishna. Then finally it is said, Akamah sarvakamo va mokshakama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence. Until now it is for all the people who have lesser intelligence, who are not so broad, narrow-minded, narrow intelligence. For them all these different demigods and all that. Oh, a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation. Desiring liberation is also desire. A devotee is akama, no desire, not even of liberation. So whichever category one falls into, he must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. So it's not that actually we have to worship the demigods to get something material. No. Because the demigods cannot give us anything without the sanction of Krishna in the background. That also Krishna has already said in the Bhagavad Gita. यो यो याम याम तनुम भक्त श्रद्धयार्चितुमिच्छति तस्य तस्याचलां श्रद्धां तामेव विदधाम्यहम्. I am in everyone's heart as a super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Even if one wants to worship any demigod, Krishna is the one who has to make that faith steady for us to worship that deity. But you see what he says. Sataya shraddhaya yuktas tasyaradhanamihate labhate cha tatah kaman mayaiva vihitan hitan. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. They are only proxies. The demigods are only what? Proxies. You know what's a proxy, right? Just a front, just a facade. Oh, I am worshipping somebody here, that demigod, this demigod. But actually, it's in the background, everything is Krishna only. So, not that the demigods are Krishna. Please don't get that wrong. This is another nonsense conception of Hindus. All demigods same, Prabhu. All demigods. No, not same. If all same, then Krishna will not say this next verse. Antavattu phalam tesham tadbhavatyalpamedhasam devan devayajo yanti madbhakta yanti mamapi. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So, worshipping Krishna and worshipping demigods has two different results, not the same. Yeah? And Krishna is saying those who worship demigods are those with small intelligence, not very intelligent. And just prior to that verse 720 also he said, कामैस्तैस्तैर्हृतज्ञानाः प्रपद्यन्ते अन्यदेवताः तं तं नियममास्थाय प्रकृत्या नियताः स्वया. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. So, stolen, the intelligence is gone. That kind of people go to devatas. Now, however rude that may sound, however harsh that may sound, fact is fact, we can't change. We have to be straightforward. Here we are about honesty. We are not about insulting someone or no. If somebody gets insulted by the truth, that is better than being comforted by a lie. What is the use of being comforted by a lie? In the end, at the end of life, we have to face Yamaraj. If we are living a life of a lie, then we may be in that bubble for this lifetime, but then after this death, then we have to face Yamaraj and the truth comes out. And we have to be punished for misusing our human life. So what is the point? So rather be disturbed by the truth, at least for the time being. Eventually everything will settle down. When our understanding is proper, everything becomes straightforward and clear, crystal clear. But in the beginning, it will be a little bit, especially if we are attached to one of the demigods, or nowadays even not even demigods, the humans. Babas, so many Babas are coming. And everybody is going into the altar, puja room. Hindus will think like this, what if he is actually somebody great, If we disrespect him, maybe something will happen to us. Let us just put his picture silently, put flowers and put incense and do puja. Don't disrespect anybody. So in the end, what is happening? They are disrespecting Krishna. By putting Krishna and demigods and some bogus Baba inside, they are equating Krishna to him, and sometimes the bogus Baba's picture is bigger than the Krishna's picture. Sometimes Krishna is not even there. They say, don't put Krishna's picture. He will blow the wealth away with his flute. Tamil people think like, I don't know where they got this. He will blow away the wealth with the flute. Sometimes they put Krishna, but they will take out the flute. Yeah, real. I did not know this until I came to Singapore. In Andhra we don't do that. But here I saw. You mean to say without flute Krishna cannot blow the wealth? Krishna is does he need his flute to blow your wealth? They say don't put this picture in the house. You will have war. As if without this picture there is no war. Without this picture there is no war. In fact, this is such a beautiful picture. How much meaning is there in this picture? Krishna, who is the master of the whole universe, he has become a driver for his devotee. How much meaning is there in this picture? Rascals, they say, this picture you cannot put. This is all, but some rascal Baba who comes and cheats them, put his hand like this and put his, he is giving Ashirwad, they'll put his picture there. We dare to say this, rascals, all these Babas. None of them are bona fide. Simply cheating. So, we should not be, the problem is, nobody cares for who is our real friend. That's why today's verse is Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. Suhridam means what? Hridam means, Hridayam means heart. Suhridam means Su means good. Ku means bad. In Sanskrit, the prefix ku. Ku means bad. Su means good. Suswagatam. Suprabhatam. Prabhatam means morning. Suprabhatam means good morning. Swagatam means welcome. Suswagatam means with warm welcome. So anything that prefix su is good. So suhridam means what? He is always at his sincere well-wisher from the heart. He is our actual well-wisher. So suhridam sarvabhutanam. He is the real friend of everyone. What does that mean? So first of all, he is giving everything to us. Even though we are atheist, we are saying there is no God, but the tongue also with which we are saying, that also is given by him. He is allowing us to say there is no God. Although we are talking nonsense, he still allows us to say nonsense also. See, if the son is scolding him so many things, father will still provide out of his love. So Krishna is providing. And not only one lifetime, trillions of lifetimes. He is providing. That he is already a Suhridam. Not only that, especially when one comes to human form of life, he has left us these instructions of Bhagavad Gita. So a well-wishing friend is a person who not only wishes well, but also advises us. Wishing is only in the mind, in his mind, he is wishing well. Good wishes, best wishes. These are wishing. He does not wish. He actually comes down to help us, give us his helping hand. And he gives us words of instruction. And he teaches by practical example. Not only he teaches, he sends his devotees and shows us what is the standard of devotional service and how to come out of this cycle of birth and death. The devotees show, like you see the Pandavas. Now we may say, oh, there are so many difficult situations in my life, Prabhu, it's very difficult. You see the Pandavas, they went through all difficult situations only. Whole life was just about difficult situations. But they sailed through easily. Because they took shelter of Krishna. So by that example, he is showing us how we can also do that. How to do it. Because many people think, this Bhagavad Gita, these people will speak. No, what is there? They just sit down and who cannot speak? When they actually face life, then they will know. As if we are not living. We are dead people. No, Krishna is saying very practical things. And therefore, Krishna speaks and then he shows his devotees by example. The devotees, they live on these principles. Therefore, we can derive inspiration from them. In this way, Krishna is making so many arrangements for our deliverance. But we are the stupid fools who don't listen to him. Instead of listening to his instructions, we think that this and such person is going to be our friend. We believe, suppose we elect our leader, thinking that he will be my friend. Or we take advice from X, Y and Z. We will read different books, how to make good business, how to, so many. Thinking that this is our friend. But Krishna is our friend, we don't listen to him. That's why it is said, if you want peace, Gyatva mam shantim richati. One attains peace if he understands that Krishna is a supreme friend. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita should be preached all over the world. If we are convinced that Krishna is the supreme friend of everyone, we should preach his message so that it reaches everybody. That is, a devotee is also he is a supreme friend of everyone, That is also said here. So these are the qualities of devotees. Titikshava karunika suhridah. See again, suhridah. This word is again coming. Suhridam today. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. Here suhridah sarva dehinam. It's the exact same thing. Titikshava karunika suhridah sarva dehinam ajata shatrava shantah sadhava sadhu bhushanah. Sadhu bhushan. The ornaments of a sadhu are these things. What is that? The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures and all his characteristics are sublime. Others may consider him an enemy, but he does not consider them as enemy. You know, like the Kauravas, they were always thinking of the Pandavas as enemies. But if you see Yudhishthira Maharaj, he never wanted to pick a fight with them. Even Arjuna, when he saw all those people on the battlefield, he refused to fight. Krishna, what is the point? You know, all our people, why we should kill? I can just live in the forest, no problem. Let them enjoy the kingdom and I'll go. You know, he did not want to fight. Krishna forced him to fight. Not forced. Enlighten him. In fact, at the end he said, you do as you please. But this time he is armed with knowledge and therefore he said, I will do what you say. So, these are sadhus also. He is friendly to all living. What is this friendly to all living entities means? Just say everybody. Not like this. This is not friendly. Sometimes he may speak very harsh words. But such a person is a real friend. Person who speaks sweet poison may appear sweet, but he may be enemy. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says like that. If somebody praises me, he is my enemy. Because he is increasing my pride. Of course, devotees, we always should glorify other devotees. That is another thing. But a devotee should not expect glorification. We all like to be praised. You know. But actually, that is just a inflation of ego. Ego will be inflated at that time. So actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur taught us that one who praises us is our enemy and one who chastises us is our actual friend. Of course, it should be for the right reason, not simply senselessly reprimanding. No. So, of course, the advanced sadhus, you're talking about the sadhus who sometimes correct us. So, they are our friends. So, friendly to all living entities means, of course, otherwise he is always mild in behavior. It's not, but basically friendly means he preaches Krishna consciousness. That is friendly. That is the definition of friendly. If I am not preaching, I am not friendly. A friend means a friend in need is a friend indeed, they say. Now everybody is in need. Who is not in need? Even the person who thinks he is not in need, he is in need. He is in greater need. Because he is in not only suffering, but he is in the illusion of enjoyment. He has double problem. So everybody is in need here. So a devotee, what is the need? The need is that they do not know who they are and who God is and what is the relationship with God. Everything forgotten. And that's why they are suffering. So the need is of Krishna consciousness. And the devotee who propagates this Krishna consciousness, he is the greatest friend. Because he carries on the mission of Krishna. Krishna's mission is to help, and devotee takes up Krishna's mission and takes it further. So in this way, Krishna and devotees, they are enemies of no one, friends of everyone. Ajata Shatru. Ajata Shatru means there is no enemy for them. See, if I hate someone, how can I preach to him? Jesus said, and Srila Prabhupada quoted him also, hate the sin, not the sinner. Because if you hate the sinner, you will not be able to preach. You will not be a friend to him. What he is doing may be wrong. For that reason, we cannot hate him. We should hate what he is doing and correct him. Hate the sin, not the sinner. So, that is a devotee's mentality. And he tries to help everyone. So, Suhridam, we have to understand that the Lord is his best friend. That's why Shankaracharya said in his Gita Mahatmya, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. One book is enough for the entire world, Bhagavad Gita. Devaki Putra Gitam. So, that one book has the solution for all problems. The UN and all these peacemaking devices will not work without this Bhagavad Gita knowledge. On what basis are we going to unite people? They may come and sit in conventions. Actually, United Nations is becoming a place where they exercise their political power. Some countries have what is that? Power of veto. What is this? Security Council. So they have, and they try to exercise their power by doing that. It's just a political nonsense going on there. So there is no unity at all. It will not work. It will never work. Because Krishna has already said, whoever understands me as a supreme friend, only he will have peace. If they don't take Krishna's advice and friendship, then they're not going to be at peace. Next thing is, he is the supreme Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. He is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Everything that we do, that's why Krishna says, Yat karoshi, yadashnasi, yajjuhoshi, dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. Why not to the poor people? They say, why should I give God? God has everything. I rather give to the poor people. They don't have. What is the point in giving to God? We should give where there is need. The problem with those people is they do not know what is the need. We are not saying don't help the poor people. But what is the definition of poor man? Poor man is not only the person with no wealth. Poor man is the person who has no Krishna consciousness. Some people are so poor that they only have wealth. Nothing else. They don't have health, they don't have peace, they don't have nothing. So how are they not poor? They are also suffering. The person who is not suffering, he is not poor. So yes, we must help the poor. But the poor is a person who, why are we in this material world? If we are children of God, we are here rotting in this material world, that means we are all poor. A rich man's son, if he forgets his father and goes and then lives on the streets and one day becomes a beggar and he is begging for food, what is the help that you can give that person? Give him some bread or ask him to reunite with his father? Which is a greater help? Of course, reuniting with his father, asking him to do that. So that is the real need. So why we should give everything to Krishna? Because everything belongs to him. And if we give to Krishna, then we will also get back. Part and parcel, we are part and parcel of Krishna. Like the finger, if it puts food in the stomach, then the finger also gets nourished. That's why the finger must put the food into the stomach. If this finger starts to protest, no, I will not put in. Why I should put into the? I worked hard, so I will eat. Why I should give to the stomach? If it argues like that, then the more he does that, the more the finger will become weaker and weaker if he doesn't put the food in the stomach. The moment he stops his nonsense argument and put the food in the stomach, the finger also will get nourishment. So we are part and parcel of Krishna. He is the root of our existence. Just like when you water the root of a tree, every single branch, twig, leaf, flower, fruit will get the nutrients. Similarly, when Krishna is served, every single part and parcel is served. That is why we have to give to Krishna. Some people say, I've already told you, Prabhupada, what he said, I think the last session. They say service to man is service to God. So serve man and God will be served. See, you want to serve God means, if I want to serve you, I must ask you, sir, what do you want? What do you want? So if I want to serve God, I have to ask what God wants. So God is telling us. He said, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever your austerities perform, do that as an offering to me, he is saying. He did not say do that offering unto mankind or humanity. Because humanity is a narrow term, first of all. Why only humanity? There are 8.4 million species of life. Human is one of them. Why? What happened to the other 8 million, 8.3 million, whatever happened to them? Why not include them? It's a very, very narrow. You just see how narrow it is. 1 out of 8.4 million. That is the kind of brains we have, humanity. Those who are humanitarians, this is the brain they have. If you take the percentage, 1 divided by 8.4 million, I think 0.0000, I don't know how many zeros. That person, narrow vision we have, humanitarian service. All living entities. And that is only possible by Krishna consciousness. Therefore, if somebody is poor, you give him prasadam and ask him to chant. He is suffering there because some papa he did, some sinful activity he has done before. That's why he is suffering. Now save him. Save him by relieving him of all the sins. And how to relieve him of all sins? I'll give you a general answer and then a practical answer, a specific practical answer. See this one. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma sucha. All your sinful actions will be gone if you surrender to me, Krishna is saying. So teach him how to do that and how to do that. In this Kali Yuga, just chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That's stated here. Where is the other one? Oh, how come it's not there? Let's see. Actually, this is also okay. See, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is quoting from Padma Purana. Namaparadha yuktanam namanyeva harantyagam avishranti prayuktani tanyevarthakarani cha. Even if in the beginning one chants the Hare Krishna mantra with offenses, one will become free from such offenses by chanting again and again. Papakshayascha bhavati smaratam tam aharnisham. One becomes free from all sinful reactions if one chants day and night following the recommendation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, just by chanting, all the sins are going to go far away. Practical solution. Ask him to open his mouth. However poor he may be, he has a mouth. Unless he is dumb. He can chant. course, those who are dumb, they can write. But that's why there is this nice verse, आकृष्टिः कृतचेतसां सुमनसाम् उच्चाटनं चांहसाम् आचण्डालममूकलोकसुलभो वश्यश्च मुक्तिश्रिया नो दीक्षां न च सत्क्रियां न च पुरश्चर्यां मनागीक्षते मन्त्रोऽयं रसनास्पृगेव फलति श्रीकृष्णनामात्मका. The holy name of Lord Krishna is an attractive feature for many saintly liberal people. You see? The holy name of Lord Krishna is an attractive feature for many saintly liberal people. It is the annihilator of all sinful reactions. Look at that. The holy name is what? Annihilator of all sinful reactions. And is so powerful that save for the dumb who cannot chant it, it is readily available to everyone, including the lowest type of man, the Chandala. The holy name of Krishna is the controller of the opulence of liberation, and it is identical with Krishna. When a person simply chants the holy name with his tongue, immediate effects are produced. Chanting the holy name does not depend on initiation, pious activities, or the Purascharya regulative principles generally observed before initiation. The holy name does not wait for any of these activities. It is self-sufficient. So this powerful thing is there in our grasp, the chanting process. Even the poorest of man, he can chant. So you want to help the poor? Ask him to chant. Automatically Krishna will give him everything. Everything will come. People think, you are just saying, what kind of logic is this? This is actual logic. Krishna is a supplier of everything, he will give everything. He is giving to the elephants also. Elephants don't have economic problems. They have huge bellies. Every day they are eating 50 kilos. You are eating only 50 kilos will take you one sack of 50 kilo rice. How long you will eat? I think 2 months, 3 months. Elephant is eating one day. But he is having no problem. Why this poor man is having problem? Just with 2-3 chapatis a meal. Why is he having problem? Some papa he has done. So that can be easily absolved if one becomes a devotee. So that's why we have to give everything to Krishna, because it belongs to him. If I take your, say, phone and I keep it, I am thief. Then why am I not a thief when I take everything that belongs to Krishna and then keep with me? Why am I not a thief? So what Krishna is asking, that I am the enjoyer of all sacrifices, he is saying, give it back to me, I am the owner. We are saying, that is too much. If I take your phone and you ask me your phone, I say, hey, this is too much, what is this, how can you ask like this? And what is that? And you will call 999, call police and let the police deal with me. So same, Krishna also lets Maya deal with us. She is the police. Okay, you take care. This police. He will also call 999. So that's why we are suffering here. So therefore, everything has to be given to him. I think in this regard there was some movie made that when the milk is poured in the Abhishek, it is all wasted, might as well give the milk to a poor man. So again, trying to deny. The thing is, if you see when we do Abhishek in the festivals, and even morning we do Abhishek, we collect the water. When the milk is poured on Krishna, the milk is collected, not that it drains out. If somebody is doing the draining out, that is also wrong. Collect it, there is Charnamrita, and then the Charnamrita can be distributed to the poor man, rich man, everybody. As we know, everybody is a poor man. Even the rich man is a poor man. And so, everybody can get the Abhishek, Charnamrita. Instead of just milk, now it is Charnamrita. So, in this way, Everything has to be done for the pleasure of Krishna. Next, he is the owner of everything. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, not just Bhuloka Maheshwaram. No. Here we are fighting for some pieces of land. Now India and China are having a standoff for a piece of land that is occupied by no one. It's a no man's land practically, and they are fighting for it. A small piece of land. Now the whole world is just one planet. But Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Sarvaloka means not only in this universe, but all universes. And not only in the all universes of material world, but also all the planets in the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. We don't even know, when Krishna says Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, we don't even know what the extent of Sarva is. We just think, the Navagraha maximum. Earth and Navagraha. That's all we have idea. Or some heaven, earth, hell, something. We don't even have any idea of what is this Sarvaloka Maheshwara. What is this Sarvaloka? How big is this Sarvaloka? With our, frog in the well philosophy. Kupa Mandukanyaya. This is called the logic of the frog in the well. The frog in the well, which is like 3 meters wide, if he tries to estimate the extent, length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean, he will never get to understand what is this Pacific Ocean. He will only calculate in terms of his limited experience of the well. Oh, my well is 3 meters, the Pacific Ocean maybe 30 meters. Maybe 300 meters, 3000 meters, 1000 times as well. That should be like too big, right? But it's nothing compared to what Pacific Ocean is. So the extent of that water, he doesn't have any idea. Similarly, we cannot even understand what is the extent of Sarvaloka when he says. So we have to accept that he is the owner. So how does that get one piece? Again the same thing. Why do people fight? Creating borders is political border. I never understood when I was we just learned it as part of school curriculum. Oh, this is the physical map, this is the political map. Only now I understand. Political map means what? All politics we have divided among ourselves. It's a political map actually, but it's not Krishna's map. Krishna, he doesn't divide the land like this. Everything is his own. He owns everything. So in the Ishopanishad, this thing is loose connection. Same. See in the Ishopanishad, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha magridah kasya sviddhanam. Everything animate and inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. This is documented already. Like we have, as I said, documents of, if you have a property, if you own a property, you will have a title deed, you will have a, this is my property. It's a document. Similarly, these are Vedic documents stating the ownership of everything. And he just, Ishavasamidam sarvam, that's it. Document. Everything belongs to me. Not that, this tract of land number, 9, Lorong 29 or something. Not like that. No address, nothing. What is the address? Sarvaloka. Everything. Ishavasam idam sarvam. Not only loka, everything that exists between the lokas also. The space, the everything belongs to me, Krishna is saying. That's it. One verse finished, all documentation finished. Ownership, everything finished. Now, if anybody else claims any proprietorship to any part of that Sarvalokam or Idam Sarvam, he is a rascal thief. Stena. Stena means thief. So, therefore, this is how we can achieve peace. This is why these three things are very important. What is that? He is the owner of everything. He is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. And he is the supreme friend of everyone. If we accept these things, these 3 points, full peace will be there. Vaikuntha. This world will become Vaikuntha. Vigata kuntha yasmad iti Vaikuntha. Kuntha means anxiety. And Vigata kuntha yasmad, where there is no anxiety, that is Vaikuntha. You know, in Andhra they say Venkateshwar. So actually it is Apabhramsha or slang pronunciation of Vaikuntheshwar. It became Venkateshwar. So he is the Lord of Vaikuntha. And when one becomes Vaikuntha Priya, a devotee, devotees are called Vaikuntha Priya. Vaikuntha Priya Darshanam. I think there is a verse. What is this? 11:229. Durlabho manusho deho dehinam kshanabhangurah tathapi durlabham manye Vaikuntha Priya Darshanam. Of course, this verse is saying something else, but for the conditioned souls, the human body is most difficult to achieve and can be lost at any moment. But I think that even those who have achieved human life rarely gain the association of pure devotees who are dear to the Lord of Vaikuntha. Yeah? So Krishna is the Lord of Vaikuntha, and if we become his devotee, then our world, our life will become Vaikuntha. Even in the midst of all chaos. At all levels we will have peace. If one individually follows, he will individually have peace. If everybody follows, collectively we will have peace. But even if everybody doesn't follow, if we alone follow, in the midst of all chaos we will still be peaceful. It will not affect our peace. Guruna api vicharyate. It is said in the 6th chapter. Guruna api vicharyate. Even the worst calamity will not shake us. Because for the soul there is no calamity. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyapo, na soshayati marutaha. The soul cannot be cut to pieces, the soul cannot be killed, the soul cannot be wet or dried or moistened, nothing. Cannot be burned by fire. So the soul cannot, there is no danger for the soul at all. So a person who is fully cognizant of that fact, why should he worry? The worry is only that, especially when we know, when we have knowledge what we are, when we are a devotee, then we start to worry that only, for the devotee the worry would be, I don't want to lose the association of devotees. Because that is the greatest treasure and that is the greatest protection, shield from Maya, the association of devotees. Once that is gone, then we are, completely open to the Maya's attack. We have no shield. So that kavacha we must always have, the association of devotees. The protection from Maya is not the 4 walls of the temple. The temple is there. But even while in the temple I can go somewhere. Like we went to Jagannath Puri. We were putting up in a lodge, in a kind of a hotel, just on the main road. And in that room there was big TV. We were in the dham. But if I am watching some Shah Rukh Khan there, then I am not in the Dham, I am in the material world. So, just being in the physical precincts of the Dham or a holy place is not residence in the holy place. One should be in the consciousness, in the bhava of the holy place. The bhava means one who is in Vrindavan, that means he who is actually Krishna conscious. He is always in Vrindavan, even if he is physically not appearing to be so. When Prabhupada was in America, we always say Prabhupada left Vrindavan and went to America, greater. But Prabhupada was always in Vrindavan. And he made America also in Vrindavan, part of Vrindavan. That is the power of pure devotee. He never left Vrindavan. And he invited many people to Vrindavan, in fact. So, of course, physically he has left his comfortable life and all that. That's a great sacrifice. But consciousness-wise, the bhava. Prabhupada said many times, what is the difference between this apartment and another apartment in the same building? Like we have one Kung Fu and many. Or many buildings are there, doing many things sometimes. Office, commercial space, residential space, whatever. And sometimes very sinful places like meat. These hawker centers are nowadays mostly meat. And there is brothels. All of them are made of the same cement and everything. What makes a temple special? It is a bhava. What is the bhava of that place? That is what makes it different. So here the bhava is how to serve Krishna. So that is the mood. That's why Lord Narayana said to Narada, Yatra gayanti madbhakta, tatra tisthami Narada. I am situated where my devotees are glorifying me. Naham tisthami Vaikuntha. I am not even in the Vaikuntha or in the hearts of the yogis. Of course he is in Vaikuntha, we know. But why he is in Vaikuntha? Because there everybody is glorifying him. Not that he is an intoxicated narcissist, but he actually glorifies the devotees. There is a competition there of who will become the greater servant. Like here, Krishna became the servant of Arjuna. So that's another whole topic. But wherever devotees are glorifying Krishna, there Krishna is. So if we are glorifying under a tree, you will be under the tree. But we have to glorify Krishna. Our life should be of glorification to Krishna. So if we are in that consciousness, then we will have perfect peace. Anywhere. Nothing will shake. And not only that, we can help so many people achieve peace by broadcasting this message. One should be convinced, the devotee should be convinced that only with Krishna consciousness we can have any solution, not with anything else. Nothing else can save a person. And if you are not convinced of that, please read Bhagavad Gita. That means we haven't read Bhagavad Gita. If we read Bhagavad Gita, we will be convinced. The only reason we may not be convinced is because we haven't read it. So read it. And then once you are convinced, then convince others. So this is a simple program. So that's why we are having this program. So take advantage and just don't remain stagnant. Increase your service and become more and more. That's why I said don't be satisfied. We should always be content with our material possessions or whatever we have. But about seva, about chanting, we should never be content. So don't be content with your spiritual advancement. If we are content, then there will become contempt. When there is contempt, then familiarity breeds contempt, you see. So that will happen. So we should always increase more and more. Never remain stale. There is intense greed. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavita mate kriyatam yad kutopi labhyate tatra laulyam api mulyam ekalam janma koti sukritairna labhyate. Intense greed is the qualification to achieve Krishna bhakti. Greedy for Krishna. We always say greed is a bad thing, but greed for Krishna is the best thing. Okay, I'll stop here. We have any announcements? Ram Navami is coming. What is the date though? 23rd of April. 21st. Oh, it's a Wednesday. Yeah. So you can sponsor anything that is there for the prasadam or anything. And do we have any questions or comments on this topic, on this verse? There's no question online. Any other question here? No questions, then we'll stop here. We'll have an arati and then prasadam. Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hare Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.